changing my priorities. I'm fed up with the old way, like it was some disease.
What we have here is a physical therapy routine for lower back pain. I learned this from one of several physical therapists I saw when I had an L5-S1 disc herniation in my lower back. The first thing you're seeing me do here is going to be a Mackenzie extension. That is basically laying on your belly, putting your elbows in the ground and lifting your chest. When I'm doing this, I make sure my toes get under me, though you see me pointing them here. I've learned to get them under me. Flexing my tibialis muscles instead of my calves. And I'm really trying to think about getting my chin straight up. Often I'm looking down at my phone too much, and because I have a timer on there. And by the way, I recommend all these stretches 1 minute or 30 seconds twice. So the Mackenzie extension, read up on that. It's the number one thing anybody with lower back pain should do. You can do it up to 10 times a day for 90 seconds. It's always the first thing I do in my workout, but I wouldn't do it too early in the day when your spinal discs are full of fluid. It can be a little tough to do right away. It can be a little painful. If anything in this workout hurts you, don't do it. But you see me doing my Mackenzie extension here for over a minute. I'll do it for up to 90 seconds. When I did this workout, I wasn't timing it because I used my phone to film myself. So I was trying to estimate at least 60 seconds each stretch. Now you're going to see me do something I don't recommend everybody do because the physical therapist didn't recommend I do it. But that is a full extension, fists in the ground instead of elbows. And again, I would like to see my toes get under my ankles essentially instead of way out behind them. I don't really know why that is. I know you should not be using your glutes or any of your posterior chain while you're doing this. Just pushing into the ground and lifting your chin and lifting your chest. So again, you can do this up to 90 seconds. But I'll probably do it about 60. And you don't have to do it. You can just do it to your elbows if it causes you any discomfort. After this, I'm going to roll onto my back. Pull my legs toward my chest one at a time. So here we go. As I'm doing this voiceover, I'm going to try and do this with y'all too. But I didn't go to my fists on my extension. I stayed on my elbows. So here we go. Right knee to chest. 1 minute. While you're doing this, and while you're doing most of these moves, one thing you really want to think about is keeping your low back connected to your mat, to the ground. Cue that another physical therapist taught me is that he had me lay on my back and bent my knees and put his fingers under my lower back and said, "Crush my fingers." So I tell people all the time that I've talked to about this routine or about working out in general and lower back pain and physical therapy, crush my fingers. That means to engage your transverse abdominis, suck your belly button in, and also kind of get your back, the opposite of arching, get flat back. It's also known as a pelvic tilt. So I'm still stretching one leg here right now. It seems like I've been on that for a while. Probably going to change soon, I imagine. But again, what I'm thinking about here is keeping my back connected to the ground as I'm pulling on my knee toward my chest. This is something that you can feel in your hip flexor, probably in the front of your leg. You may feel it in your glute and hamstring if you're tight back there. Take a moment to admire the setting. It's not a bad place to work out. Everybody should work out there. After this, we're going to grab both knees at the same time and pull them toward our chest. Keep this going. Hopefully you've set a timer to do your stretches. Though obviously this video should cue you, but again, I'm not timed here, so I'm giving you my best estimate before I move on to the next stretch during this workout.
to be somebody. I don't hear no words, and I got no doubt.
See me pulling it tighter and tighter as I go. I'm trying to keep the other leg flat, the other foot flat to the ground, even maybe pushing off it through the heel. Now both legs. Now, this stretch I find interesting because I find myself pulling my knees outward. I believe the spirit of the stretch would mean to pull them inward toward your chest, kind of together as you're bringing them to your chest, like you're doing a cannonball, and not stretching into the groin. We're going to do that later. When you come out of this, maybe do a little happy baby. If you're familiar with that yoga move, that's one of the best moves people can do. The more I get into learning about physical therapy and, well, kind of athletics too, this hip mobility is absolutely paramount to athleticism, to everything else feeling good, and to longevity. I think studies are showing as well. Okay, now I've gone into an IT band stretch, which is a misnomer because an IT band is not a muscle to be stretched. But again, I'm trying to keep my lower back and my hips connected to the ground. And while I'm doing that, I'm pulling my right knee toward my left shoulder. Something I've had trouble deciding with this stretch is, should my right knee be bent or straight? As you see here, I'm keeping it straight. I feel like that intensifies the stretch. But you can definitely do this stretch with your knee totally bent. Some people bring that bent knee to the ground and then open up their shoulders from there. I'm trying to keep this isolated, I suppose, where everything else is stable while I'm just working on that hip joint. Bringing it across my body, knee to opposite shoulder. Okay, switching legs. We're doing the left leg. By the way, I tended to start with my right side, as that was the side that was more in pain all the time with these stretches. Now I try to alternate day by day. I do these stretches pretty much every day, and I'll alternate starting with the left side versus the right side on pretty much every stretch. And I just do that because I'm kind of desirous of ambidexterity, and I don't want to compensate to one side, or I want to be as balanced as possible. And that might be a little too detail oriented to worry about which side you're stretching first, but I like to do it that way. So again, as I'm doing this, I want to keep my left hip as connected to the ground as possible and bring the stretch into the hip by bringing the left knee to the right shoulder. Across the body here. You see me hold my left arm out straight, try to keep my left shoulder to the ground. But also, I should keep my lower back connected to the ground as much as possible. Okay. Now we've done the IT band, we're going to stretch our hamstring, and we're going to do that by, best way is pulling on the back of the thigh, since a lot of people tend to be too tight to, pull on their toes or behind their ankle or even their calf, as I'm doing here. Also, the way the physical therapist had me do it was to get kind of like a hand towel or a small towel or a strap and pull it around your toes. Now, again, I'm intensifying my stretch here by pulling closer to my ankle, below my calf, but I'm seeing my left knee rise up off the ground, and that's telltale that I'm probably lifting my lower back a little too. I should be crushing your fingers, crush my fingers, whatever, while I'm doing this, keeping my lower back connected to my mat as possible, keeping flat back. But in the name of stretching, I think all of us kind of pull on our muscles and forget about proper position. But I wish I was demonstrating better for you. I'm more showing off my flexibility, I guess. So this routine, by the way, it's about 15 to 18 stretches. Each 1 minute, so it should only take you 15 to 20 minutes to do it. And actually, the hamstring is pretty much the last one that the physical therapist included in my routine. As I did it more and more frequently or really with consistency, I found that I was lacking. I needed to get my quads stretched as well. My patella on my left side was riding really high. My kneecap was getting pulled toward my quad, I think because my quads were so tight. So I've added quad and calf and groin stretches. And one thing I know I didn't do for this video, but I do now, is quadratus lumborum stretch, which I do by sitting up straight, getting my legs as wide apart as I can, and then leaning over toward one and grabbing. And that's stretching the low back. But for now, I'm doing the hamstring. Again, the best way is with the strap, or just by tugging on behind your thigh, trying to keep your legs straight. Okay, I've sat up on my mat. I'm stretching my groin, the butterfly stretch. I'm moving my microphone. Not in the video, in the voiceover. Excuse me. I don't need to narrate that action. Yeah, the groin stretch, the heels, closer they are to your pelvis, to your groin, the more difficult the stretch, the more intense. So I try to bring my heels in very close and then push my knees down. Now I'm kind of leaning forward. I would rather see myself sitting up straight, thinking about engaging the transverse abdominis, sucking in my tummy, my belly button. Okay, we did a groin stretch. Now I believe we're going to move into quad stretch. Normally now this is where I would do the QL. I would unbend my knees and again fan my feet out as much as possible and grab each foot one at a time with both hands for a minute each. I must be on a water break. You'll have to excuse my absence. But again, take in the setting. Look at the water. I go there every weekend. So, again, I believe the next stretch is going to be quadricep, which I have been doing kneeling a lot lately, but I've gained a problem from that, which is called housemaid's knee. I have bad bursitis, which is a sacs of fluid surrounding my knee in all directions, on top of my patella, on the surface of it, and then underneath it as well. And I think that was brought on either by too much jumping in a day or all the rolling I do and kneeling I do down on the mat, sometimes on harder surfaces. So try not to be kneeling too much, because it seems your knee might get really swollen. Thankfully, it wasn't yet at the time of this video. Alright, I'm back, and I'm probably getting pre-workout in now, because I try to save the pre-workout for after I stretch, because that's the point at which the workout has really begun. So, we're grabbing our toes, quadricep stretch. At this point, I hadn't started doing it from kneeling, but I highly recommend that kneeling stretch. Just watch out, don't get bursitis like me. And the kneeling stretch would basically be lunging and then grabbing that foot. But standing is better. That's why I'm doing it now, because my knee is so inflamed. Another time to be thinking, though, about flat back if you can. Proud shoulders, chest up to the air, chin tucked and back. Balance training going on. From the looks of it, I need it. About 15 minutes in right now. Okay. And all the other stretches I usually would do the other leg immediately after the first, but as it's kind of hard to pull on your quad for a minute, and then do the other one, that one might suffer. I do both my calves after the first quad. So I'm stretching my right calf right now on the baseboard. I also recommend doing it on a big foam roller. If you have that, you can put it in the corner of your room or up against something and stand on it. That'll be a nice stretch in your calf. Or by slant boards. If you're in the knees over toes, giggity, giggity. I mean, that's awesome. By the way, that's what I try to do every other day that I'm not doing this routine. This routine helps me feel like a human and mobile. But the knees over toes, I'm really getting into that stuff. I like walking up hills backwards. And I like that, working muscles that may be forgotten otherwise. The tibialis, that's the hot new thing that train your tibs, get a tib buck. But just walking backwards up the hill will do it for you. Or as he says, walking backwards on a treadmill. So here I'm stretching the left calf, which at home I do on slant boards. That was the segue from knees over toes, excuse me, 2 knees over toes. And here you see me, hands on hips, kind of trying to think about, again, flat back, hips forward, intensifying the stretch. Calves have gotten I feel like my calves have gotten a little stronger as they've gotten more flexible. Interesting. Some people absolutely hate stretching. I have found I've finally learned to love it through my injury. It'd be great to precede this entire routine with some self-myofascial release, laying on the cross balls. Put a couple of cross balls in a sock and put it under your quads while you're on your belly. Feel the wonderful, wonderful pain. Okay, we stretch both calves. We're going to go back to the left quad now. Again, quads and calves weren't stretched in my physical therapy routine, but that surprises me now because I feel almost reliant on those stretches as do any others to feel it. It's something a lot of people neglect because we all feel compelled to try to touch our toes every now and then. We feel compelled to pull on it. I used to stretch the front of my hips, the hip flexors. I don't do that as much anymore. I found that was actually making my pain worse. The kneeling quad stretch is kind of close to that, but the way I used to do it was hook my in front of my ankle with my elbow. And I read from an Instagram physical therapist that you should not be doing that. After practicing it for a while, I agree with him. I do it ballistically, or well, not quite ballistically, but you'll see me in this next set of moves, the cow poly hip flow, that I will kind of stretch it, but I'll only do it for a second, not for a minute. I'll do it for pulses. So we're getting into the Cal Poly hip flow here. I learned this, this was created by a guy I went to college with, the Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, Chris White, who is now strength coach at LSU, which obviously means he's good at what he does, because that place is an athlete factory. And Chris used some Pilates and yogic principles as well as some physical therapy to create this universal warm-up for athletes. And I've been using it just to try to gain more mobility in my hips and therefore more athletic potential, I believe, as well as more pain, freedom from pain, more pain. First thing we're doing is 6 deep breaths. And sorry the shot isn't very good, but I have my hands in front of my sternum and I'm pulling my elbows back as I inhale deep. And I'm rolling my ribcage forward as I exhale at fully. 6 full inhales and exhales, pulling ribcage back, inhale, exhale, forward. Everything we do, we're going to do 6 moves or 6 pulses or 6 reps. So after that, we're going to do 6 hip circles. Now, Chris White created this with Chris Holder at Cal Poly Slow, but this version, aside from these hip circles, I learned from another a YouTuber, Gurya Girl. her hip flow, she says she learned from Holder, and it's awesome, but it doesn't include these hip circles, and I love the hip circles. I don't really like to be seen doing them, but I think they're just a good move. Like, that's along with the 90-90, which go learn the 90-90. Look up the 90-90. That's the first thing you should do every day, I guess. Along with the 90-90, I think those hip circles are really, obviously that's what hip mobility is, what you can do with those. But Guriya Girl, instead of the hip circles, has you do reaches, and that's what you see me doing here. You can't see, but my arms are fully outstretched, and I'm looking over them as I go side to side 6 times. Thinking about my breath while I'm doing it too, exhaling as I reach over. Okay, we did hip circles, we did reaches. Now, I'm not demonstrating it, but go look at Guriya Girl. You chicken neck. Y'all chicken heads out there. Hopefully not. Well, I don't know. I might want... oh, God. Chicken neck. You move your chin forward and back 6 times. And pause it for a second at each position. Forward, back. Forward, back. Forward, back. Okay, then you try to do 6... I don't know. It's like a robot dance move. It's like poppin. You got to slide your head back and forth over your shoulders, and it's impossible to do it first. Nobody understands what's going on there. But watch yourself in a mirror and learn to not only chicken neck your head forward and back, but left and right. Now I'm getting into a down dog. I'm reaching up first, and I try to stand on my toes for up to 10 seconds, or maybe as long as I can. Looking straight up with my arms straight up before I dive into a downward dog. I flex 6 times there, pulse my hamstrings kind of. Then I go to single leg down dog, lifting the other leg straight up in the air, pointing my toe if I can, and bringing it forward into a lunge. Then I put my elbow to that front foot sole, the same side elbow. Oh, excuse me. Elbow to knee first and flex it out 6 times, just pushing on the inside of your knee with the same side elbow. That knee is forward. Then 6 times elbow to sole of your foot, to the arch of your foot, and opening up that arm, reaching straight upward for thoracic mobility. I'm talking too much, I'm going too fast. 6 times of that thoracic mobility opening up, and then you go into a Cossack squat, which is squatting backward, but with one knee open. As you see me do here, and I'm reaching straight out in front of me as I go back, or reaching to my left, rather. With my right foot forward, my left foot back in a lunge, and I go Cossack squat. And from the Cossack squat, it's what is this called? Warrior 1, Warrior 2, Sun Salutation, Crescent Pose. I think it's Crescent Pose. Someone told me that today. I'm glad I heard that. So it's Cossack squat to Crescent. And when you do the crescent, that's when you're opening up that backside hip, like I talked about earlier. I don't do it for a whole minute, but I do 6 pulses. And then I do this weird, kind of sexy pulse, twisting my hips. And then I go back into a down dog. Everything's 6 pulses in a down dog. And sometimes I'll go back standing and stand on my toes again for 10 seconds before I go into down dog and single leg down dog. But what I did is I pulsed down dog and went to a single leg with the other side. And then I'm pushing out on the knee with the elbow 6 times, and then I'm bringing the elbow to the same side, front foot arch, and then opening that up as much as I can, reaching straight upward or reaching all across my body. Looks like, look at me. Yeah, I'm mobile. Thanks, Dub. Now I'm going to go into the Cossack squats with the right foot back, the left foot forward. So the right knee is bending in the Cossack squat, the left knee is bending in the crescent pose. If we can keep the back leg straight in the crescent pose, that's even better. That's another knees over toes thing. That's the ATG split squat. Giggity. But again, I think this kind of movement is best for opening up the front of your hips, not static stretching. I think you want to move it and not hold it in that case. Something about increasing the femoral gap, I read, or something like that. Yeah, something. Once again, I'm not a physical therapist, but I am a guy who's been doing this physical therapy routine for at least 3 times a week for over 8 years. And I had a 12 millimeter disc herniation, and it doesn't really bother me anymore, and that's good, because I never had surgery. Okay, so we did 6 Cossack squats to crescent poses, and we did 6 sexy wiggles with our hips across our body, and we're now doing 6 pulses of down dog. And we're done with the down dog part. We're flipping right over into a crab walk, but just a crab walk pose, rather. because we're going to do glute bridges. And as we do these glute bridges, they're going to be single arm glute bridges. We only keep one. I use my fist. You can keep your palms flat to the ground, but I try to keep my wrists straight all the time doing this stuff. I don't know why. 6 reaches across your body as you're doing a glute bridge, reaching as far as you can. And after you do 6 to each side, you'll keep both hands on the ground for 6 more reps. And on the 6th of each of these now, I like to kind of pause it for 5 seconds, hold it for 5 seconds. Look at that, my goodness. I do this on the beach sometimes. People look at me funny. Why is that? Whatever. Are we going to hold it? No, we didn't hold it. Oh well, now I do. Hold it for 5 seconds if you want to, the last rep. After that, you turn yourself right over into a wide stance, and you do more thoracic mobility exercises, trying to open up the rib cage, trying to make sure the shoulders can twist. Be careful. Don't hurt yourself. Sometimes I do this too fast. Now I do it a little more slowly and deliberately. 6 down dogs with your legs wide. I never really pulse in that because it's hard to feel that stretch properly. Maybe I just should pulse outward. Wider. Okay. We're getting the pre-workout in us. We're moving pretty well today. There's not a lot of dilly-dallying. Sometimes this workout can get very paused by your phone, that kind of stuff. Mainly your phone. Bringing the mat back to the ground because now we're going to do the mat work part of the hip flow. We did, the part I dread most is the Cossack squats. It's always hard to get your mind engaged into wanting to do those. But now we're going to do the hurdler stretch. We're going to put one leg out in front of us, and the other we're going to bring to a 90-degree angle at our side. Like we're going over a hurdle. One leg outstretched, the other behind us already. And we are going to cross that leg that's in front of us and dip our torso toward the ground 6 times. After we do this 6 times, we're going to quickly bend the knee of the leg that's in front of us into a locust pose. And we're going to have to bring our hips under us and the other leg behind us instead of out to the side. Someone's admiring my mobility routine. Yeah, that's right, guys. This is what you got to do. Now I'm in the locust. 6 pulses. I've also seen people say don't do the locust pose. I don't know why, but you might not want to. I don't know. 6 of those locust pose bend downs or whatever. And then we're going to get to one knee, and we're going to flex that glute 6 times just to bring our hips forward. And on the 6th, I'm going to hold it for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See that engagement? See that improvement? Goodness, glutes. Flex your glutes, people. Your glutes are really important. And now we're going to do a little butterfly pose, and we're just going to do 6 pulses of it. Now we switch sides, doing the hurdle to the other side. The first stretch, excuse me. Pulses. This gives you a good idea of how intense that stretch is. That looked pretty good. I look like I'm flexible. Right into the locust. This is another one where I watch that back knee. Just grinding it onto the mat over and over again every day is probably part of why it's swollen for me. So I try to keep myself on the mat. But this is a good time to talk about no shoes on the mats at the gym. You don't need to stand on a mat if you're wearing your shoes. You should never put the bottoms of your shoes on the mats that people lay on. How is this beyond you people? Excuse me. 6 glute flexes, trying to focus on the left glute, the side with the knee under it. And now 6 butterfly pulses. But again, you don't put your shoes on the mat. That's what people lay on. You don't need to walk on. You should avoid walking on them. Please. You fools. Excuse me. We're 30 minutes in right now. We've done all of our stretches and most of the hip flow. All that's left in the hip flow now is to sink into a deep low squat and flex out your knees 6 more times with your elbows like we did when we first lunged out of the down dog. Squat low. Try to maintain your squat. Don't relax in your squat. Try to maintain some tension, I think. And then push out on those hips. And then raise your arms as much as you can from that squat position. This is for shoulder mobility, which besides your hips, that's the next most important thing to keep mobile. Besides, well, maybe your ankles too. Oh goodness, there's a lot of you got to keep everything mobile. Well, no, you got to keep some stuff stable. I think it alternates. Whatever. Okay, after the shoulder mobility, we get into just stretching the arches of our feet. Try to keep your heels under you. Now I'm getting weird with this because, again, my knee is very inflamed, so I put a yoga mat under my knees, or under my shins, rather, so my knees aren't grinding into the ground. And kind of leaning back with it, too, because I think my arches have gotten more flexible. Yeah, they can stretch. And after we do the arches, we're going to stretch the front of the shins, tibialises, by putting our feet, the tops of our feet, flat to the ground, and, again, keeping our heels together. And that's when I really lean back and intensify the stretch. But for now, still doing the arches. Okay, now we're moving into tibialis. These muscles are, according to, new cutting edge people like Knees Over Toes guy, the tibialis muscles are too ignored and more important than we know. And it kind of makes sense that they are going to absorb a lot of shock for you, for your knees probably, and just they probably are overlooked by most people who train. Okay, lean back. And that actually